Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Kashif Kamran. Today I am conducting a session which is a post-result review session for the AAA December 22 exam results. Now the results are out. It's almost been a week now since results have been announced, and I think that must have given a lot of time to the students to decide and judge what are they looking for in terms of their upcoming exams in March or June. Now, once the results are announced, it's a very critical time because you need to sit down, particularly when you are flunked in a paper. And I'm talking about the AAA paper. So, if you are flunked in the AAA paper, when your results were announced on the 16th of Jan, what is the next course of action? How you should be focusing on your study for the AAA. Should you be appearing for the March exams or not? Or should you ideally go for the June exams? So I'll be discussing all sort of things today in my post result session, which is basically the next step forward, because that's the most difficult thing where the student lacks confidence that what they should be doing from the point they have flunked in the AAA paper, how they should devise the right strategy looking forward. So let's open the session and let's talk about various aspects which should give you clarity by the end of the session in terms of what should be your next move. Now, obviously, when you look at the passing rates for the AAA paper, there is nothing unusual in these passing rates. It's the passing rate for the December 22 was 32%. You might compare that with the previous exam setting and say, okay, it has fallen by 2%, but realistically, there is nothing unusual in this 32%, because if you look at the average of the last 6 exam sittings or the 7 exam sittings, the passing rate for AAA is in the same region. The average passing rate for AAA is like 33%. That means 1/3 of the student only pass this paper in a particular exam setting. And 2/3 of the student, majority of the student, fail this paper. Now, that is the most critical thing that needs to be investigated, that why a student is failing. Now, there is something, because 1/3 of the students are passing. So that means those students who are passing the paper, they are doing something special, they're doing something extraordinary, or they're trying to read the mindset of an examiner in a better way than you are reading it. Because I believe when the results are out and a student fail in a AAA paper, particularly the ones who fails at 46 or 47 or 48 or 49, um, for them it's very difficult to absorb that why they failed. And they keep putting messages and they keep putting complaints that we had a wonderful paper. I was expecting 50, I was expecting 60, I was expecting more than 60, but why has the examiner failed me? See, first of all, you need to come out of this mindset that the examiner has failed you when you've done a good paper. This cannot be the case, because examining team or the marker is independent, unbiased. He has no association or no relationship or no grievances with you or no grudge with you. Why would the marker fail you? He must have failed you because he must have done something wrong. And when the marker must have evaluated your paper from the question 1 to 2 to 3, uh, he didn't found much of the opportunities to mark you. If you failed at 47 or 49 or 46, even with the professional marks in place, even with 20 professional marks in place, that means you have done something technically wrong. You just fetched 46 or 47 marks. You lost 40, you lost 53 marks or 54 marks, which is the broader side. So that means you've lost a lot of technical marks and you've lost a lot of professional marks, which needs investigation. So first of all, when the results are out and you fail, the very first thing is why I failed. Till the time you don't overcome that phenomena, you will not be taking the next step very carefully. So there is nothing unusual in the passing rates for AAA, despite the fact they've fallen by 2% over the last exam sitting, but they are in the same zone in which the AAA passing rates are. But the investigation is more important, that what are reasons why the student is failing? Or what are reasons that why you failed in the AAA paper? That needs to be investigated. So let's have a look on that investigative process. The next step forward, that's where the session is today. That's where I need to give you a clarity guidance that what should be the next steps forward, what you should be doing from this point onwards. Now, I think the very first thing, the results were announced on 16th. Today is the 22nd. So ideally, 6 days have gone by when the results were announced. And I think there must have been a cooling off impact by now when I'm doing the session. And by this point in time, probably you must have taken a decision. What are you doing next? Let's see whether my discussion here uh, gives you some support in terms of the decision you have taken. Now, the first thing moving forward is the big question. Should you give your paper in March or June? Now, ideally, if you have flunked the AAA paper, for the first time. You have given the first attempt in December and you flunked the paper. Now, and you flunked at like 46, 47, 48, 49, or even 45, or let's make it more holistic. You flunked in 40s, you flunked in 40s. And this was your first exam sitting. Then ideally, I would recommend you that you should go for March. You should go for March because at the end of the day, you just need a fine tuning. At the end of the day, you just need to identify where you went wrong and you just need a fine tuning. And I'll be coming to that. The fine tuning for the student who gave the first exam sitting for he sat for the AAA paper for the first time in December and he flunked in the 40s should ideally go for the March 23 exam sitting. Number one. Number two, a student who is continuously failing in the AAA paper. 2 attempts, 3 attempts, 4 attempts, and you're struggling. Uh, the best way out is opt for June, unless and until you have a situation where you have to appear for March anyhow, or you have some family pressures, or you have some commitments, and you know, I cannot do it in June, I have to do it somehow in March, then go for March. But ideally, if a student is failing and is failing on a continuous basis, like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, with the marks in 40s or even going down to 30s, because probably when you continue to fail, there might be a negative impact on your marks which starts to go down because you're not performing that well, because you're not very much motivated when you're sitting in the exam hall. So with multiple attempts, multiple failures, I think it's better to take a break. That will help you make a very good strategy. The break will give you better time till June. You can analyze your problems. You can discuss the problem with your mentor, with your teachers, and you can find the best way out for June exams. But again, if you are in a hurry and you think, no, I cannot wait till June, then definitely you have to appear for the March exam. So two sets of students, the one who set for December first time and failed, you should be going for March. Multiple failures, you should go for June. So you need to devise a strategy moving forward, looking at your own limitations and challenges, or your family pressures, or your commitments, and etc., and then moving onwards towards the right decisions. The decision timeline is narrowing. Today is the 22nd. I'm doing this session. The standard exam entry is 30th of January and the late is 6th of February. So ideally from this point onwards, you have 8 days for the standard exam entry to decide March or June. And you have technically 2 weeks for the late exam entry to decide March or June. But every day every day passing by, and you're not deciding what you should do, you're wasting your time, because the moment you decide I'm going for March, then every day will count towards your study. And every day you waste, okay, I have time till 6th of Feb, and you're wasting time till 6th of Feb. And on the 5th, you take a decision, I'm going for March. You technically have a month left for the March exams, which is around the 5th of March. So I believe the decision has to be taken, and it has to be taken quick. So every day after the decision contributes towards your study of the AAA paper in the rightful manner, which I will be guiding you shortly. I know it's very difficult to absorb a failure, and I can totally understand your mindset, but you need to come out of it. You have failed. You had that sadness of failure for 1 day, 2 day. Probably by now you must have a cool down impact. You're not just the one who failed in the triple A paper. There are two-thirds students, 67% students who fail globally who sat for the triple A exams. So you're not just a single one here. There are many with you who must have gone through this phase of absorbing the failure and looking forward. And I think the one who gets over this early is in a better position to make a right impact in the upcoming exams and pass. And honestly, I've seen students with stories which comes to me as a tutor, and the students share their stories with me, uh, and these are motivations, right? Telling me that this was my 11th sitting for AAA, and I eventually passed in the 11th sitting. So as a tutor, I've seen students passing in first attempt with very good marks. I've seen students passing in second, third, fourth, sixth, seventh, ninth, even 11th. So what is the lesson here? You are not losing hopes. But I know there is an economic situation around your failures as well. There is an economic implication around your failures as well. There are lots of countries which are going through tough economic crisis. And with exchange rate volatilities, this might have a negative impact on your decisions as well. And that's what I just mentioned, that a decision about March and June could also move around your financial situation, whether you are supporting yourself or your family is supporting you, your parents are supporting you, the financial crunch and how that financial crunch is affecting your family. I think that would also be impacting your decision about March and June as well. But again, with the economic situations worsening in lots of countries, you need to get yourself motivated that I'll do it this time because I don't want to be part of more economic pressures, and I just want to pass this paper, get to the job, and start earning. So that's where motivation can come back to you. Now you failed, right? And you took the decision that I'm going for March or June. The very first thing which most of the student, or perhaps none of the student, do is evaluate your weakness. I think students spend time on why I failed, why examiner failed me, why my paper was so good. I was expecting 60, why I failed. My paper went so good, why I failed. You need to come out of this, because the more you discuss this, the more you're demotivating yourself. So failure is the new start. Failure leads to a new start, and you need to start it as soon as possible. So your marking team is not your enemy. Your marking team has no grudge, no issues, no problems with you, that they only failed you and they passed the other one. No, it's an independent process. So I think it's time to sit down with the pen and paper and evaluate, because you were in the exam environment. You were in the actual exam environment. What went by in the 195 minutes? What went through those 3 hours and 15 minutes? There were technical problems. There were some issues with computer. You could not type. Your speed was down. You lost way in the question 2, question 3. You started well with question 1, but you took an overtime in question number 1. You ran out of time. What is the problem? Or you did not absorb the case study as much as you wanted, or you got most of the technical marks, but you lost the professional side. You were not taking the right decisions, or you were not criticizing the management statements, you were not exercising the commercial acumen, or you were not doing the proper evaluations, you were not you're not taking the right actions which need to be taken in the context of the case, and you lost most of the professional marks. There must be something. And you can answer that, not I, because you were there in the exam hall. You flunked at 45 or 44 or 41 or 49. Why? This is a question rather which I should ask you, rather than most of the time it's the vice versa. So evaluate your weaknesses. And probably the best way to evaluate your weaknesses is this. Read the December 22 examiner report. It's published, it's out. So it is available. Read the December 22 examiner report, because that's critical. If probably when you're reading through it and you're reading the examiner perspective of the stronger student and the weaker students, the good students and the bad students, you might find something which relates to you. You might. I'm not saying 100%. You might. And if you might find something which links with you in the examiner report, you've already investigated one of the reason why you failed. So I think you should sit down, read carefully the examiner report. And I always tell students to read examiner report with a red pen and a green pen. The red pen for anything the examiner is criticizing, anything examiner is telling about weaker student, and a green pen for anything the examiner is telling about the stronger student, or anything the examiner is appreciating. So probably that red and green analysis would give you the do's and don'ts, and you can relate the reds with you. And if some of those red relates with you, you're probably investigating the reason why you failed the December 22 exam. So read the examiner report should be the first step. If after you have taken a decision, I'm going for March or June, and after you have taken a decision that I should sit down and evaluate my weaknesses rather than blaming the examining team or the marker or the checking process, come out of that phenomena. Okay, the next thing. You investigated some reasons why you failed. If you found some from the examiner report, because even sometimes the student reads the examiner report and says, I could not find any reason why I failed. Okay, leaving that aside. The next step is sitting down to study with the right resources. Now, if you're going for March, you have very less time. You're going for June, plenty of time. Irrespective March, irrespective June, what should be the right resources which should be on your table? Because a lot of times the students are so scattered about resources. Either they're using the wrong resources, they're using overload of resources. Because remember, overload of resources is also a failure. Having both BPP and Kaplan books, both kits, I'm doing the BPP kit, I'm doing the Kaplan kit. I'm reading the BPP book, I'm reading the Kaplan book, I'm reading the technical articles. You're just destroying yourself. You should have a focused resource, refined resource, because you're reappearing. You're not going for the first attempt. And because you're reappearing, it's very, very critical that you make a proper resource list. Because the first time you went for the AAA paper, or you're repeating AAA paper for many attempts, you actually know the paper. You actually know what is the structure of the paper, and lots of things which you must have utilized in the first exam sitting or the multiple exam sittings should slowly, gradually goes off your list, and you should make a revised list of resources. Let's see what are the list of resources which can be utilized in a more effective manner towards your success. The right resources moving forward. Number one, obviously the technical articles. And as a teacher, I always put my weight on articles, not books. I've never recommended books to students, probably because I believe there is so much in articles, and articles have been written on so critical areas of AAA, and so much support has been given by the examiner through those technical articles, that if I am studying, I would just take a printout of the articles, whichever is available on the website for ACCA, and I'll just make a file, and I'll just start reading them from syllabus area A, B, C, D, E, and I'll move on F and finish off. The article is giving you the perspective of the examiner. The article is giving you what the examiner is thinking about the topic, for example, forensic. When you read the book, that is what the BPP or Kaplan is thinking about a topic. So the book cannot be a substitute of the article. Article is to take precedence over the book. Article has to come first. So please ensure, make a plan, how many articles you read, how many you skipped. Have you ever read them in a proper way by maintaining a file and going through them? Because you will get very good examples. Examiner will tell you what he expects from you. In many articles, the examiner tells you the exam focus. A lot of time, the examiner gives you examples of procedures, examples of situations which can come in exam paper, and they can prepare you in a wonderful manner. So please ensure you read articles from syllabus area A to F in order and make a file of it if you've never done it. Particularly, you know that the first question is made around risk, whether that is business risk or that is the risk of material misstatement, and similarly the audit risk. Now, just to show you one thing in a more organized manner, recently, the examining team, if you can see the articles in front of you and you go to the articles for syllabus area D, which is planning, the two new articles added is the exam technique articles. They're not giving you knowledge, they're just telling you how to write a good answer. An examiner has given you the exam techniques for business risk, the part 1. An examiner has given you the exam technique in part 2 for risk of material misstatement and audit risk. And then examiner is telling you AAA candidates are expected to be able to evaluate risk to an audit and assurance engagement. These articles, the 1 and 2, are intended to help you achieve both the technical marks and the professional marks usually associated with the requirement on risk. And that is the major question. And if you can refine yourself around risk, you can refine your techniques around risk, you know how to fetch the technical marks as well as the professional marks by reading these two articles under the syllabus area D, can have an amazing impact, a wonderful impact, a positive impact on your number of marks you fetch in the March exams. So please ensure the exam technique articles under the syllabus area D is like very, very important. And you're reading through all the articles. This is just one example of the recent ones and the better ones from examiner, because every time the examining team comes with a technique article that is very, very good for the student. Okay, moving backwards. The next thing, recent past papers. The ones on the practice platform. Try to do the past papers on the practice platform as a first priority, because the one on the practice platform are the more recent one, whether they are the specimen exam, they are the practice exams, they are exams from the past exam library, particularly the exams under September, which are tagged like from September 22 onwards. Because we know there's some changes in the question number 1 in terms of the materiality statement, the way you comment on the materiality in the question number 1 has changed. I've already put a comment on that in my September 22 webinar. My December 22 webinar was a paid webinar, but I even put a comment on that in September 22 that the materiality statement coming in question number 1 has changed. The way examiner wants you to calculate the materiality and the number of marks allocated with it has changed. So the recent papers, I've seen students doing kits, revision kits, going far down to the old papers. You don't need them. If you just do the recent papers, that is the best approach, because you're repeating. You are repeating your paper. So the recent papers, the recent 4, the recent 5, the recent 6, we know that if you go behind September 22, that materiality statement, which is coming in the question number 1 in the partner email, you will not see that. But at least If you have seen the recent papers, you must have seen that the materiality statement coming in the examiner email, partner email, sorry. And at least when you're even doing the older papers, you can calculate the materiality in the new way, or you can determine the materiality in the new way. That is helpful. But if you're just doing the old papers and you're not doing the new papers, you're not preparing yourself well. So try to do the recent papers, the ones on the practice platform, the better, rather than spending time on the old papers, right? You're not giving AAA for the first time. 2 to 3 examiner reports, probably two. The September 22 examiner report, because that was the first one after the professional marks came in, and that was the first one after the new materiality statement comes in the partner email. So I would prefer September 22 and December 22, the two examiner reports, two, not three. Because if you go to the third one, that would be from the June exam where there were no professional marks. So if you want to learn professional marks, understand professional marks, understand how the examiner give you the professional marks, I think it's better to review the two examiner reports, which are critical. 2 to 3 recent examiner answers. I would prefer, because you failed the paper and you failed in like 40s or 30s, there is something wrong you're doing with the approach of writing the answer. Now, one thing which needs a clarity here, when you're writing your answer and I give you a permission to read the examiner answer, my read of the examiner answer doesn't mean that you're getting impressed with the length and the way the examiner writes the answer. My perspective of reviewing the examiner answer is just to find some good opportunities, just to find some good ways of starting your answer or blending your answer, or just finding how to explain a point. Not to get the length examiner is explaining, because examiner answers are tutorial guidance, they go into length and depth, ignore that out. But just try to find how the examiner develop a procedure, or how the examiner develops a risk, or how the examiner develops an implication for the audit report. So try just to see how the examiner develops the perspective. Again, not the length. If you just evaluate 2 to 3 recent examiner answers, you can implement that in your upcoming exams. And that will give you a better opportunity to improve the quality yardstick or the quality threshold of your answer. So examiner answers, just review them, find some opportunities, find some ways of explaining a point, not getting impressed with the length of the answer, because if you start getting impressed with the length of the answer, you're failing in the March exams even. Examiner answers can be reviewed for the marking scheme. What is the marking scheme? Particularly if you review the examiner answers for the recent papers like September 22 or December 22, you get an opportunity to know the marking scheme, the recent ones. So please carefully evaluate the examiner answers. The purpose should be very clear, that why are you reviewing the examiner answer and what you should not learn from the examiner answer. If you start learning something from the examiner answer which should not be learned, like how long the answer is written, that's very dangerous, because you have 3 hours and 15 minutes. You have a reasonable time for every question. Within that, you need to write the best answer. And so, for example, I normally tell my students, the examiner quote the standard, the examiner quotes the accounting standard, the examiner put the name of the accounting standard, and the examiner denies that in the examiner report, that the student should not write that because there is no extra marks for it. Now, why is the examiner writing it? 100 of times I've told that since I'm doing my webinars, that examiner answers are tutorial guidance. If there is a self-study student who wants to learn accounting standards, the examiner answer is a very good source of learning accounting standards. If you just look at the past 5, 6 examiner answers, you can probably learn like 15, 16 accounting standards, because they covered so much in the AAA paper. But there are lots of things the examiner is doing which the examiner negate in the examiner report or in the exam technique articles, that the student should not do this because there is no marks for it. So if you try to do everything the examiner is doing, that's also wrong. So you're just reviewing the examiner answers to find some opportunities or find some incremental impact on your answer, which improves the quality of your answer. Recent webinars, that's important. Now, recent webinars, the December 22 webinar I did was only for registered students. Anyone who paid for it got access. It was no more a public document. It was no more publicly available on YouTube. So anyone who needs the December 22 webinar needs to approach me and needs to ask me for giving you admission in the December 22 webinar, because again, the recording of that is only accessible after you make a payment. Till September 22, the webinars are on my YouTube channel. So at least you can watch the September 22 webinar, because in that webinar, I covered the professional marks. I covered the new materiality statement in the question number 1, how to draft an answer for the new materiality statement in the question number 1. So September 22 is public on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. And you can even watch the previous month, the June and the March, for the technical areas. So the technical aspects can still come from the previous webinars, including the September. But from December, the webinars got paid. Even I'm planning my upcoming webinar for March 23, which will be a paid version. You can even buy bundled March and December. So you can buy the two webinars together, the December and March. And I would be offering the bundled webinars in the next week. The students can buy them. I will be conducting the March webinar by the mid of February, but you can start from the December webinar buying it. And with that buying option, you also get the March webinar as well. Attend the ACCA mock exam for March 23, and I think ACCA published the mock exam around around the third week of Feb. So around the third week of Feb, the mock exam will be available on the practice platform. So you can do the practice platform. You can go to the practice platform, do the mock exam, and I do the debriefing of the mock. And again, that debriefing of the mock is available to my registered students only. If any student wants to buy it separately, you can buy it separately. But normally I do my debrief a week before exams. So if your exams is on 5th, so expect the debrief to come by like the 26th, 27th of February. So these are the right resources, right? So first of all, look at the number of attempts you have given. Your first attempt and you got failed, multiple attempts you're failing. Fine tune your resources. Your resources should go down and down and down. Practice is the key. More practice is the key. Reading examiner reports is the key. Answers, evaluation of answers is the key. And technical articles is the key. So you need to spend a lot of time on the right resources in front of your screen. Okay, now moving towards some more investigations of how you should be moving forward from your failure to the upcoming March or June exams. Sitting down with right resources to study, we just discussed on that, but just a quick analysis that the right resources which should be on your table when you are studying and sitting down, we just covered them. So just ignoring this part out. I did emphasize on do practice of the recent papers. And I did mention which recent papers you should be practicing as your first priority, the one on the practice platform. And the more time you spend on the practice platform, the better that is for you. So if you're still doing papers with pen and you're with that pen approach, no, you're going on the wrong side. You need to do papers on the practice platforms. The ones which are not available on the practice platforms, you're still doing them on a blank workspace. So the more time should be spent on the practice platform, the better that is for you. Evaluate your answers with model answers. I've just given you a suggestion of that. I've also given you a suggestion that what you should not be learning from the model answers. Model answers are good for marking schemes. And again, I've given you a lot of opportunities which can come your way from the model answers. But again, there are lots of things which model answers should not guide you, because you will be going on the wrong track. So a careful read of the model answers can be good, but probably if you're not getting my message, you might go off track reading the model answers. Aim for bonus marks. Are there any bonus marks in the AAA paper? To me, yes. Now, first of all, in the question number one, the revised marking schemes, if you're familiar with the revised marking schemes, there are three technical marks for materiality now. Which is to read the partner email, and in the partner email, the partner will tell you on what factor the materiality should be based upon. Now, if the partner is saying, I want the materiality to be based upon profit, then identifying the range of profit, 5 to 10%, calculating the 5% and the 10% will give you 1 mark. Then choosing the right materiality. Now you calculated the 5%, you calculated the 10%. Now which one you should choose? Somewhere in the middle, 5%, 10%, or somewhere in the middle. Now examiner will tell you, is it a recurring audit? Is it a first year audit? You need to look at the number of risk and then take the right decision. And examiner is very, very clear saying that not necessarily that the judgment of the examiner matches with your judgment. Examiner might say 7% of the profit and you might say 5%. Examiner might say 6% of the profit and you might say 9%, because examiner is looking for your decision and the reason of that decision to give you marks. There are three technical marks for materiality: the calculation, the conclusion, and your decision. And your decision that this is the right level of materiality. And I've already covered that in my September webinar. These three are bonus marks. You should get 3 out of 3. In the 20 professional marks, you have 4 communication marks. And the communication marks is in the question number 1 only. When you're putting a briefing note, when you're structuring a briefing note very well, you're putting the headings and the subheadings in the briefing note, you are trying to do things in order A, B, C, D. If the partner is saying you should not do this, you're not doing that. If the partner is saying you should find the answer in Exhibit 5, you're only finding the answer in Exhibit 5. If the partner is saying read all the exhibits and evaluate the risk, then you're reading all the exhibits and evaluating the risk. So if you follow the instructions of the partner, you put up a very good briefing note, everything is structured in A, B, C, D, you're putting a conclusions, you are evaluating the risk, you're evaluating the significant risk, you know how to prioritize the significant risk, you're putting up the materiality statement in the right manner, you can aim for 4 out of 4 professional marks, which relates to communication skills. And again, this has been covered on my YouTube channel, communication skill marks, even in my September 22 webinar. So I think these 7 are the bonus marks, which all of you should at least get 7 out of 7, because there's nothing much to lose if you follow the boundaries of these 7 marks. Watch my webinar, September 22, or then you can register for the upcoming webinars as well for clarity. Adaptation is the key to success. No doubt about it. You need to adapt because your knowledge alone will not help you pass the AAA paper. So if you just have a knowledge from the BPP book about a topic like due diligence, or you have a knowledge from BPP book like reporting, or you have knowledge from the BPP book on something like money laundering, that alone knowledge would not help you pass a question on money laundering in exam paper, or on reporting in exam paper, or on due diligence in exam paper, because you need to see what's happening in the case study. You need to adapt according to the case study. You need to look into the circumstances happening in the case study and blend the knowledge with the case study. So if the knowledge gets blended with the case study, that is adaptation. And if there is adaptation, you're moving towards success. But if you just keep knowledge and you just try to put the knowledge into the answer, you're not looking at the circumstances in the case study, you're failing. So probably a lot of time, the student just put the due diligence knowledge in the answer, or just try to put the money laundering knowledge in the answer, not looking at the special circumstances or the special situations in the case study around the topic, which must have been blended when you're writing the answer. Absorb the case in the answer. The more you indulge in the case, the more you involve in the case, the more you go into the case and you dig out the case, you investigate the case, you try to find the special things in the case, and then relate that in your answer, put that in your answer, you're moving towards success. And I always recommend adaptation, absorption. Adapt look at the situation, adapt your knowledge, absorb the case. Because if you're absorbing the case, you're doing the right thing. So the more you get into the case, the more you get involved into the case, the more you absorb the case, you're producing a better answer. And again, the more you keep yourself far from the case, away from the case, that's where the generic knowledge is coming in, and the generic knowledge is failing you. So it's the application, right? It's the application. A standalone knowledge, a rote learn knowledge, and directly going into the paper. That's where student continues to fail in 30s. That's mostly the phenomena with the students getting low marks in the AAA paper. Build clarity around professional marks. I've already done videos on professional marks on my YouTube channel, and I emphasized on them in my September webinar, which is a public document, in my December webinar, which is a paid document, and in my upcoming webinar for March. Clarity around professional marks can also come from the September 22 examiner report, can also come from the December 22 examiner report. A lot of good suggestions has been given by the examiner when I was reading the December 22 examiner report just a couple of days ago after results. There's so much you can learn from examiner reports September, December, from my videos on YouTube, from my webinars September, upcoming one March, and even the paid one December. Build clarity around professional marks. Because I believe if you're losing professional marks, you're also failing at 45, 46, 47. Because if you are gaining the 20 professional marks, not 100%, but you should aim for gaining like 75% of them, 70% of them. So even if you're aiming at 70% of the 20 professional marks, you should surpass 50 easily. But I think one of the reason why the student failed in this recent exam was probably they were not understanding the professional marks well. So if you are repeating in March, I think you should give a lot of time to your understanding and to your clarity of professional marks. And I will be addressing that a lot more in my upcoming March 23 webinar, just to give you examples about how you fetch and how you lose professional marks, because the clarity around that would be an opportunity. So try to give time on professional marks, try to see how clear you are on professional marks, read examiner report, read examiner answer, just to see how examiner fetch those professional marks realistically. Read technical articles. I've already recommended that in my approach, so I'm not putting more time on that. I'm already emphasized on the two technical articles which were under syllabus area D, which is the exam technique articles part 1 and 2, which is more must to read. Watch the recent webinars, again, the free ones till September on my YouTube channel, and the paid ones, you need to buy them. And for that, you need to approach me, and I'll be telling you how you can approach me. Attend the March 23 webinar, but again, that will be a paid one, so you need to register for that. The registration process will open in the first week of February, so you can just follow my social media and or my YouTube channel, any social media platform I am on. I will be putting the post about the admissions are open for the March 23 webinars, and you can enroll yourself for that. We'll bring a lot of clarity to professional marks and bring a lot of clarity to the new things which has come into the paper since September 22 exams. You can follow my YouTube channel where this session will also be uploaded, and you can watch the professional marks videos. You can watch lots of guidance videos on write exam strategy I've covered for September exams, December exams. Even you can watch my webinars, the previous ones on the YouTube channel. So plenty of stuff which is there, which will be coming on the YouTube channel in the next few weeks. So do go down and subscribe to my YouTube channel for all the updates. Okay. Do the March 23 mock exam. That's must. You should plan to do it ideally after the 1st of March, when your exams are just 3 to 4 days away. And then do watch my debriefing on it. Once you wrote your answer, fine. Now, how would you evaluate your answer? Through my debrief. I will not be checking mock, but I will give you a debrief, and you will play the debrief, and you keep your answer on the table, and you will watch the debrief and you say, oh, this is what the tutor liked. This is what the tutor disliked. and you will self-evaluate and see where you are standing. But do the mock ideally after the 1st of March, a few days before your actual March exams, if you're preparing for March. So that is it. You can visit my LMS, lms.kashifkamran.com. You can enroll for courses if you want to enroll for the AAA full course, or you want to enroll for the upcoming webinars. You can enroll right here. Or if you want any clarity on admission, or you're facing any issues in getting through the admission process, you can just WhatsApp me at my number on your screen, which you can just copy and then put a WhatsApp message to me. So I wish you all success. I hope this session must have helped you in some investigation of issues and problems, why student continues to fail. But it's more about sitting and evaluating your weaknesses. And if that is investigated, if that is evaluated, and you're putting the right resource for study, you will be successful. So this is Kashif Kamran, and I'm signing off from this session where I was investigating the post scenario, or the post result scenario of the AAA, where student continues to fail in numbers, and that's where the problem lies in, and that's was the purpose of putting on the session. Take good care of yourself, study effectively. I'm signing off from the session. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.